As 1976 dawned, transatlantic travel had gone supersonic, and my racing life was accelerating to Mach 2. But I'd yet to learn that the secret to success in racing and in life is maintaining momentum. Formula One was on the cusp of its greatest season ever, driven by a rivalry for the ages, and Formula Magazine was growing and getting better with every issue. But I wanted more. I wanted to be James Hunt.
Yet you're still extremely fast. How do you do it? Big balls.
At 21, I was finally ready to start racing Formula Ford and began my inevitable climb to Formula One. My personal style was evolving, but there was no hiding that I was still a man-child. I failed to launch, and I was still living at home with my mother, grandmother, and my younger sister. Diane and her friends had already lapped me in the race to maturity. The only thing that scared me more than growing up was disco fever, which had consumed the planet. I was also falling in love with the new racing series I'd discovered 2 years earlier.
IMSA's motto is racing with a difference. The difference being that it's done with you, the fan, in mind. The Camel GT Challenge.
IMSA also brought Formula Atlantic to America for the first time. Gilles Villeneuve was the man to beat, but I was a fan of young Bobby Rahal, whom I'd met 2 years earlier. My Formula Ford hero, Alan Hawley, was moving up to Formula Atlantic, and I was happy to own his Eldon Formula Ford to begin my racing journey. Britain's weekly Autosport magazine was the best way to stay connected to Formula One, and it influenced every issue of Formula Magazine that I produced as art director and managing editor. But my immaturity took control, and I somehow convinced myself that I was more important than my Formula Magazine teammates. So, during the same week, the two guys named Steve started a $3 trillion company in a garage. I left the company I helped create for an uncertain future. I'd also overlooked the fact that the first Long Beach Grand Prix Formula One race was happening that week, and I didn't have a credential. So I fell back on my teenage misdemeanor behavior and forged perfect replicas of one I borrowed from a friend. There was only one catch. Every pass had the same serial number. So on March 28, 1976, I walked back into the world of Formula One for the first time since March 28, 1971, when my journey inside the sport began at Ontario Motor Speedway. But I soon realized that I'd not traveled very far because I was there again with a forged credential and no real job. At age 21, I already felt I was a has-been. My sister Diane attended the race with me, and I was reminded that I was now an outsider when she posed for a photo with Formula Magazine editor Hugh Mooney's March Formula Atlantic car. My pal, Formula 5000 racer Ed Pauley, and his girlfriend also came with me, but they were immediately caught when a security guard noticed that they had identical serial numbers on their fake credentials. Long Beach Grand Prix founder Chris Pook was soon personally checking credentials in the pit lane, and he got within 5 feet of checking mine when something thankfully distracted him. I was numb and ashamed of myself as the race started. There was little joy in being there on that historic day, and I promised myself that I would never fake it again, and that I would find a way back inside the sport. Clay Regazzoni won the race for Ferrari, and to me, he was the definition of maturity. The truth is, I represented the opposite of maturity. When I saw the first issue of Formula Magazine that was created without my involvement, I was crushed by the reality that I was not special, and I could be replaced. Like in racing, that moment reminded me that the race and life goes on without you if you don't show up. So I decided to show up for every opportunity to find my way back inside the sport. The first was an offer from local publisher Paul Oxman for me to art direct his book, The Road Racing Annual. I began to realize that my ego was not my friend as I drove north in early May to Laguna Seca for the IMSA Camel GT race, where I would help Oxman with his merchandise booth just outside the paddock gate. I also realized that I still enjoyed being a racing fan, so I purchased a paddock pass. Like my first experience with IMSA in 1974, the paddock was friendly and welcoming. I couldn't get into the pits, but I finally discovered my true purpose. If I was going to continue in the sport, I would do things to share the sport with racing fans just like me. They would be who I worked for, not my dangerous ego. 1 week later, I was back where my journey started at Ontario Motor Speedway for more IMSA racing. Gilles Villeneuve won his third Formula Atlantic race in a row, and it was clear he was destined for greatness. My friends Pete Halsmer, Mark Monroe, and Hugh Mooney all ran well in older cars, which made me even more determined to race. Meanwhile, in Formula One, my hero Mario Andretti made a fateful decision.
Mario Andretti returns then to Lotus alongside Gunnar Nielsen.
Another fateful decision was made by 38-year-old aerospace engineer and sports car racer Janet Guthrie, who became the first woman to enter the Indianapolis 500. Although Janet's aging car wasn't quick enough to qualify, I was impressed with her courage, commitment, and speed when A.J. Foyt let her practice in his backup car. At that time, earning a starting spot in the Indy 500 was not easy, as demonstrated by two-time SCCA Formula Ford national champion Eddie Miller. On the day of the 1976 Indy 500, I was preparing my Formula Ford for my first race, so the moments before the start took on a whole new meaning. Mario Andretti again took a break from Formula One to chase Indy 500 glory, while Johnny Rutherford's rain-shortened second victory for McLaren was another reminder that the worlds of Formula One and IndyCar racing were intertwined. On that same day, Janet Guthrie started her first NASCAR race at Charlotte Motor Speedway and finished 15th, opening a new door into the sport for 51% of the population, as Dale Earnhardt finished 40th on the one-year anniversary of his first NASCAR start. 2 weeks later, Mario Andretti re-energized his Formula One ambitions.
But in fact, Anderstorp 76 was all about Mario Andretti and Lotus. He'd missed Monaco to race in the Indy 500, but Mario was back in black, and Lotus with pole position, leading the Tyrrells away. For 45 laps, Andretti looked impervious until finally his engine would let him down. Well, with Andretti out of the running, Tyrrell with first and second, Niki Lauda in third position.
It was a time of legends, and I wanted to be one of them. I completed my final SCCA driver's school under the watchful eye of my instructor and friend, Mike Hall, who wrote "Nice job on the straights" in my logbook. I was also fortunate to have the help of Craig Shirey prepping my 1972 Eldon Mark 8. During the July 4th weekend, I started my first SCCA Formula Ford race after qualifying 18th out of 42 cars at Riverside International Raceway. But something clicked inside me when the green flag flew, and I surprised myself and 13 other drivers by passing them, until I got to 5th place and on the tail of the very quick ADF Mark II that Craig had prepared for his brother Richard Shirey the season before. Now the yellow ADF had a new driver named Nancy James. She was fast, precise, and calm under pressure. Although I was supremely talented on the straights, I could not pass her. But a few other things were happening on that July 4th weekend. The United States of America was having a coast-to-coast bicentennial birthday party, while James Hunt channeled the spirit of '76 by fighting his own Revolutionary War at the French Grand Prix.
Round 8 of the 76 World Championship, the French Grand Prix. Niki Lauda, the comfortable points leader with 5 race wins. Ferrari had already won all but one of the races. 5 wins to Lauda, 1 to Regazzoni, and no mechanical retirements all season. They were fast. So far, they'd been impregnable. But all that was about to change. By lap 8, Hunt was in the lead. And what a day it was to be for James Hunt. A win on the road in France. And the FIA Appeals Commission reinstated the points that were taken off him when he was disqualified from Spain. So he gained 18 points in less than 2 weeks. Lauda actually lost 4. The championship looks a very different proposition after France.
2 weeks later, we headed north to Sears Point Raceway at the top of the San Francisco Bay for my second Formula Ford race. The course was challenging with a lot of elevation changes. After several spins in practice and a visit with the SCCA stewards, I started 16th out of 38 cars. Like my first novice race at Riverside, I began passing cars until I advanced to 5th place, but I missed a shift on the final lap and dropped to 6th. The truth is, I had no idea what I was doing. My driving was fueled by pure adrenaline rather than raw talent, but I was now on a mission to finish in the top 3. That same weekend, James Hunt was on a more important mission at the British Grand Prix.
As lap 45 begins, Hunt makes his move, and behind the trees on Druids, he gives the home crowd what they've been waiting for. The red and white car number 11 is in the lead.
James, how much does this victory mean to you? 9 points, $20,000 and a lot of happiness. How much? Can you give me a cigarette? Can I grab that cigarette off you? Thanks.
2 days later, and 7 years after man first stepped foot on the moon, Viking 1 landed on Mars.
Viking gave us the first view of Mars as if we were standing on the surface. Viking did provide a wealth of data. People began to see the real Mars.
And I began to see the real world rather than the childish fantasy world that I'd lived in. I could now also begin to see the real me with all my weaknesses and strengths. Racing was teaching me valuable lessons in desire and motivation, but August 1st, 1976 delivered the ultimate life lesson as I approached my 22nd birthday. If you're a racing fan, you know the story of Niki Lauda. His accident on the second lap of the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring could have ended his life and his fight for his second world championship. The courage of his fellow racers in pulling him from the flames that engulfed his Ferrari was truly inspiring. But what came next from Niki Lauda delivered a heroic lesson in commitment. The reality was that I was only half committed to racing and to my floundering media career. But I was soon back in the cockpit at Riverside for my third race. I qualified 8th out of 48 cars, and I knew I could go even faster. For the first time, I ran with the leaders, but my inexperience showed when I was caught up in someone else's accident as we moved through lap traffic. It was time to reassess priorities. That weekend, Roger Penske was likely doing the same thing. 1 year after he lost his friend and driver, Mark Donohue, from injuries suffered on the morning of the Austrian Grand Prix, Penske Racing returned to score its first and so far only victory in Formula One. John Watson stood on the top step of the podium that day, and 3 months later, Roger Penske would step away from Formula One. On Labor Day weekend, I attended the 7th annual California 500 at Ontario Motor Speedway, but the buzz was long gone. Rumors of its imminent demise again began to circulate. Bobby Unser won the race, but the bright spot for me was seeing local SCCA club racer Rick Mears make the race in Bill Simpson's Old Eagle. Rick had also shifted his priorities from off-road racing to racing formula cars, and it was clearly paying off. But what happened that same weekend in Monza shook the sporting world. Just 6 weeks after his accident, Niki Lauda was back from the edge of death, and in the cockpit of his Ferrari, fighting for his second Formula One World Championship. He became a legend that day by finishing third, while a new legend was rising in North America.
In 10 races in the Canadian Championship Series, Gilles won 9 and walked away with the championship easily.
Just 1 year after the high point of the inaugural Long Beach Grand Prix, the Formula 5000 Series was in its last season after it failed to excite North American racing fans. But rising star Danny Gaius did excite the fans, and he would play a pivotal role in my future. Some days live forever in our memories, and the first Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji Speedway is one of them. Niki Lauda's courage rose to a new level when he chose life over mortal risk, and James Hunt fulfilled his unlikely destiny by becoming Formula One's bad boy world champion. As my hero, Mario Andretti won the race in a way that promised more victories would soon come. 6 weeks later, I finished my work on the 1977 Road Racing Annual, which included my illustrations of 2 racers who inspire me to this day. I'd survived without Formula Magazine, but now it was time for me to get serious about my racing or the media business. As 1977 neared, I still believed I could have both.
Happy 1977!